Hello, what is up? Making sure my audio's going, looks good. This is really going to be a short video. I know I never do short videos. Nobody ever watches them anyway, so it doesn't matter. But this one is really going to be short. I'm only going to talk about like 2 or 3 things. I already have the tabs open, so here we go. First thing, Event 201. Event 201 was the Johns Hopkins Center for Health and Security, the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security in partnership with the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation hosted Event 201, a high-level pandemic tabletop exercise on October 18th, 2019. That's about exactly a year ago. And you know what? That was before COVID. What an interesting thing. Exactly 1 month before the first reported case of COVID in New York, of all places. The exercise illustrated areas where public-private partnerships will be necessary. Public-private partnerships. Do we see any of that going on right now? Will be necessary during the response to a severe coronavirus pandemic. What a coincidence! Coronaviruses are a group of RNA viruses that cause diseases in mammals and birds, and in humans and birds. In humans and birds, they cause respiratory tract infections that can range from mild to lethal. Mild illnesses in humans include some cases of the common cold, while more lethal varieties can include SARS, MERS, and you know the rest. To a severe coronavirus pandemic. 1 month before a severe coronavirus pandemic hits, they hold a tabletop exercise about exactly what people need to do. And this is what they did in public. Can you only imagine what they did behind the scenes? And you've got to admit, wasn't there just like all these graphics that came out of like the coronavirus? And it was like this high detailed 3D rendered molecule of this exact coronavirus with the little triangular ends and the red blood in the background and all that. You know exactly the image I'm talking about. It was everywhere, all over the news. It was like a poster child ready to go, ready for its day. And it had its day, and it still is having its day. Of course, not the imagery so much. What we're going into is just like the terror alert from nearly 20 years ago. That's exactly what we're going into. And I'm sure roughly half the population remembers that. It was like every day on the news, it's what's the terror alert? Is it red, green, blue, brown, freaking turquoise? Like, here's what it is. They somehow know what the terror level is. It's like, if you guys know so damn much, why don't you squash it? Which apparently that happened because there was never any terror to worry about. But and I'm not saying there's not terrorists out there in whatever forms and factions, just like there's bad viruses out there in whatever forms and factions. But the fact is, that was a power grab, straight up. It was obviously a power grab to do all the TSA crap they do now. And now what are they doing? They're taking that TSA power grab and they're like, oh, you guys bought that one, huh? Well, we're going to level it up now. And now it's going to be, you want to go to work? Here you go. And now we're past that window of like any form of sanity, because at first it was like, oh, listen to the World Health Organization numbers. Listen to the World Health, only the World Health Organization, listen to this one global entity. Don't listen to anybody else, not even the CDC. They don't know. Okay, well, let's listen to the World Health, who contradict themselves on a regular basis. According to the World Health Organization, 10% of the world's population has probably been infected with SARS-CoV-2, which is COVID. Let's think about that for a minute. 10% of 7.8 billion, the Earth's population, is 780 million people. Just over 1 million people have died with the COVID worldwide. And it says, I made this, and it says with COVID because they didn't necessarily die of COVID. Those COVID deaths are people who supposedly died with COVID. Not everybody died because of COVID. And I'm not trying to make light of people who did die of severe acute respiratory syndrome. That sucks. That means only a fraction of a percent, 0.14%. That's 0.14. That's less than 0.2% of people infected will actually die. That's if you that's a little over 1 in 1,000 people that are diagnosed with it will actually die of it or with it. So why is everybody still running around with non-FDA approved masks on? You know what I mean? Like even the FDA ones are just like, okay, this is okay to wear to filter out some stuff, but really there's harder core certifications that those masks should be held to beyond just a simple FDA like surgical mask. But people aren't even wearing FDA approved masks, and a lot of those paper masks, if they're even wearing a paper one, is from China. So what's up with that? And then the thing like the handkerchiefs, if you look at the stats on a handkerchief, you might as well be wearing nothing. I mean, it's only going to catch the big spit drops that are flying out of my mouth right now because I'm talking all crazy, But short of that, the big visible droplets, that's all a handkerchief's going to catch. Everything else is just almost like you're not even wearing anything. You can look at the scientific stats on it. They've done tests in so-called scientific laboratory kinds of settings with all the various materials and stuff, and even the cloth masks are just not too far right under that to where it's like they don't even, the size of a COVID particle is somewhere in between 0.06 microns and 0.14 microns. So the median size is about 0.1 microns for that COVID particle, right? Most likely somewhere right there. Well, those masks can only filter, like the mask, not the cloth masks, not the handkerchiefs, none of that crap. The masks that are like an N95 mask, basically, can only filter adequately 0.3 microns. So that means an N95 mask can only adequately filter particles that are 3 times the size, roughly, of COVID, an N95 mask. So does that put it into perspective right there? Okay, yeah, so there's the math if you need to know that. Okay, I'm going to get rid of that window there. Yeah, coronavirus pandemic in order to diminish large-scale economic and societal consequences. In order to diminish economic and societal? Are you kidding me? Whose economic pockets are we talking about here? Because they failed on their tabletop there. All they did was intentionally, in order to diminish large-scale economic. Okay, if we get rid of the consequences, and we just say that this is what meant to be economy right there. So, in order to diminish large-scale economy, yeah, that's exactly what they did right there. We'll leave it at this. This is a Wikipedia page. English, Wikipedia.org, Wiki, John Hopkins Center for Health Security. Yeah. This whole world's bought out and sold out. Better get straight with Yahweh Yeshua. Here it is, Event 201, event201.com. Brave browser, where this is supposedly like a more secure, the guy who invented JavaScript, actually, is the guy who started this browser project and runs it to this day. And he was fired from Mozilla Corporation, which was the corporation that basically used to be Netscape, kind of, sort of. It became the Mozilla Foundation, so to speak. Like, everything was handed off from Netscape, which was the browser that brought us web browsing, right? And they handed off the technology to the Mozilla Foundation, which I think he might have had a hand in starting that too. He was definitely a part of it. And they came out with the Firefox web browser, and everybody who's been around since, the Terror Alert days remembers that right at the middle end of those days was the best browser you could have was Firefox, like Firefox 1.0, 2.0 days. That browser was badass. It was based on the Netscape source code. But what they did was they actually went in and just like gutted out the engine and all this stuff that like was really good about Netscape, and then they just redid the whole front end on it basically. And it was just browsers were getting bloated, websites was getting bloated. everybody disabled JavaScript at that time because there were so many just like it was just all about making annoying stuff. Nobody was doing really much anything cool with JavaScript at that point. It was just like what tracking cookies and crap like that are today was JavaScript back in the day. And so anyway, Firefox came out and it was like the best of all the worlds and then some because it was like the most standard compliant browser. It had the latest CSS stuff for the most part, all that kind of stuff. And it also had like little features that Internet Explorer offered, dare I say it, a browser that I never could stand. But, you know, Microsoft had a few bright ideas, and one of them was actually putting a little green button, a little go button up there that you could click and say, you know, after you typed in your web address or whatever, you could just click go instead, or copy and paste a web address and click go instead of having to reach down on your keyboard and hit enter. But in Netscape and some of the other browsers, you actually had to do that. And back in the day, I remember that was a big deal. So just to have a little button you could click, that little, I don't know if they still do it or not, but usually a little go button will pop up there. But anyway, that's all to say that this guy, he became a few years ago, he was promoted right at the beginning of this big worldwide social justice warrior pandemic. He before the pandemic, he was promoted to CEO. Well, they immediately just started attacking him. And one of their big things was, oh, he donated to a political faction in California that was not pro gay marriage, you know. And I was like, wow, really? And so I think he just ended up stepping down because the whole company was just sicking themselves on him. Or at least, you know, they were making it appear as such. And I thought, wow, how freaking ridiculous, you know, like this is America, you know, and I'm not going to say like either way about how I feel about marriage because whatever, you know, to each their own on that. And it's not even something that the state should have a hand in, even for straight people. I guess I said too much right there, but yeah, I mean, so they're going to judge this guy. He didn't even come out and say like, oh, I'm anti-gay marriage or anything like that. He did not say that. He just had contributed some money to a campaign of somebody who happened to not be pro gay marriage, or I'm assuming it would be like probably against it, probably vote against it, right? And so it's like, oh well, if it's all within legal bounds, whatever, even if dude was a member of a communist party or something, which obviously we could see some of the repercussions of stuff like that these days, but you know, like whatever he wants to choose, if he's doing it in a non-violent type of manner, you know, that's not impeding anybody for anything, you know, outside of the bounds of law, then that's a freedom of being an American. So instead of running this guy out of that position, they should have ran their own asses out of this country to another country, you know, that like whatever. I'm not saying that they don't have the right to, you know, be pro-gay marriage and stuff. Be pro-gay marriage. Take your hard-earned money and donate it to candidates that are pro-gay marriage and do all your rallying and stuff and do that. And maybe he'll just be throwing his money in a fire, you know? But anyway, this browser is, yeah, I guess I lied when I said this video would be short. But this browser it does micropayments, like cryptocurrency digital micropayments. And if you think these people haven't known what the fuck they're doing this whole time since way back, I mean, this is all my opinions, right? You know, whatever. Prove me wrong, please. But this is my hunch, is that these people have known this stuff, that they know what's coming down the pipes. You know what I mean? Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, all that crap, that's been going on since plus or minus 1980. You can go look it up. And they have been, just one or very few people have been getting supported to create this cashless digital electronic cash system, you know, based on cryptography and stuff. And that has been going on. And all across the decades, there's always been somebody with their little tiny company or whatever that's been responsible for handling that. And then when you finally get up to like 2010-ish, then, you know, Bitcoin comes out and it explodes from supposedly one person who goes under like a Japanese name, but types with British style and is in the MIT, excuse me, East Coast, United States time zone. Yeah, exactly. And then they claim, like, oh, we just did this because we're anti big banks and big banks have screwed us over with the recession and all that. Bullshit. Bullshit. We got to wake up. You know what I mean? These people are tugging on your heartstrings, tugging on your emo, and they came in and they're like, oh, it's anonymous. It's anonymous. Tell me anything about digital that's anonymous. The fact that I'm visiting this site right now, they have my IP address logged, and that IP address traces back to my router effectively. You know what I mean? And my ISP, internet service provider, knows which IP address they have assigned to which router and who's renting that router from the ISP company. All that stuff is all there. It's all on paper. And yeah, maybe it might take a few days or a few minutes or whatever for them to connect all those dots, but we're in the world of big data now. And we're in the world of artificial intelligence and data crunching and faster and bigger and faster. You know, it's like it's all just everything can only get crunched at the speed of light even more. And look at right here, here's 4 tracking cookies too. Just so not only does this site know that I'm visiting it, you know, through just a very few degrees of connection, and they can trace my IP publicly and just know what city I'm in, probably like even a portion of the city maybe. And right here we have tracking cookies that are, oh, their fonts are tracking me. Click here. Oh, so it's on a warning. What does it say? Center the slider to block cookies, huh? What does this one say? To block a whole domain. Okay, so they're just blocking the cookie, but they're not yet not trusting the domain, this privacy badger, for potential trackers blocked. And it will let through cookies if they're not doing bad. It will let them through. It's once they start violating our basic rights that they're like, hey, you know what? You're taking it too far. You're exploiting this technology. Then they block it. Google Analytics, no surprise. Sometimes Google doesn't get blocked, though, some of their other services, but Google Analytics, horrible. Twitter, I'm getting tracked by Twitter right here. And 2 Twitter trackers. And you know what that's probably in? Those little social buttons. Like right here. Oh, click it to share. Click to share. They sneak that little button on there. It's like a free advertisement for Twitter. And it's like, oh, you can so conveniently share this crap, and they're tracking you with it. They're tracking you with that little thing. There's the exact image I was talking about. Who does not remember that image, right? I mean, give me a break. Other. So yeah, that's just the whole like straight out of Made in China or whatever you want to call it, Made in Italy. Whatever happened to Italy? The whole month of March was all about Italy. Yep. All about Italy. And now you never hear anything about it. And that's when at first we saw the images of the Chinese country people walking around and then they just spontaneously pass out. But if you watch the videos, it's like weird the way it doesn't look right. It doesn't look like somebody just passes out. It looks like America's Funniest Home Videos, kind of like somebody trying to fake it on there or something. Like, oh, I'm going to pass out and fall, and at the last minute, I'm going to stick out my arm and kind of catch myself, but try and make it look dramatic. I don't know what I'm doing down there. So yeah, so this is micropayments, and it's a lot like how it's just the whole tracking thing. It's digital money, and they're like, oh, you know, you can have an ad-free browsing experience, and you can just give a few cents or a few dollars or whatever to a website at any point. You could just go click in the corner of the browser and, you know, send them your cryptocurrency and all that, and the world's such a good place. And it's like, oh, really? You got it right on that. Just like those, like I was kind of trying to allude to with the Bitcoins, and how they're acting like it's anonymous and it's, you know, to screw over the banks and all this stuff, and, you know, supposedly the hackers using it. And it's like, what did they do? They just got a bunch of people to believe all that crap, and then they start Silk Road, and then they just go and bust all these people. It was just a big dragnet operation, effectively, you know, to like get a bunch, like, who's dumb enough to fall for this? It's like, since when does taking cash, which is about as anonymous as you can get, they really have to beat around the bush to track cash. They have to go to like facial recognition on security cameras, track where your phone was at, you know, stuff like that. And then they can like really beat around the bush and maybe have some infer who was spending like guesswork on cash. That's why they want to get rid of it. You know what I mean? These people, you might be normal, but there are a lot of people out there who aren't. And picture how much of a freak you really are inside, and there's people who are way more of a freak than you are. You know what I mean? So they're out there. All those people you can imagine that are like, oh, nobody would ever do that unless they were like way out, and I can't even imagine somebody like that. Well, they're out there, all right, and they want to do that, whatever that is. They want to do it to you and me and everybody, and they got the money to do it. Some of them do, and they're on their way. That's why they got Event 201 rocking. You know what I mean? So picture any little clickiness you ever been involved with, any little privilege you might have really had, or anything at whatever times in your life. Well, these people got a lot more of it, and they're all about that shit. So believe it. Here's another one, Center for Health and Security.org. It's about Event 201. There it is. So if you go here, Center for Health Security.org/event201/about, then you can get this fancy web page that talks about it, and you can even go over here to videos and click on that and watch videos of it. You can click on photos and all that stuff and check out all the media for this whole thing. Oh, there's the WHO was there. WHO responds to 200 epidemics events each year. We need to prepare for the event that becomes a pandemic. Event 201. What a coincidence. Yeah, we need to come up with a narrative. Yeah, what do you guys think? Give me a break. And that's what it was, too. Just with those same graphics, everybody was preaching the narrative. Everybody needs to social distance. Everybody needs to lock down and social distancing. It was like they were all saying the same thing, and they would be the most bizarre people too. You could tell part of their little clique clubs coming out with their little narrative all practiced, telling you social distance, motherfucker. And then they're like, yeah, that will work. And they would go on podcasts and stuff and the news, and they're all saying, it's like, who the fuck are you? Who the fuck are you talking about? Like people talk about how weird Bill Gates is saying this shit now. It's like you should go look at some of the characters that were saying it back in March and April. Go look that stuff up again. Go relive those moments and tell yourself, wow, I fell for this crap. I didn't. Coronavirus, doctors told to plan for vaccination scheme. BBC News, 1st of October. This is the current date right here. And right here, doctors in the West Midlands have been told to plan for massive coronavirus vaccination scheme from as early as November. So since we're not November this year, it must have been November 2019. A leaked document identifies 2 vaccines which are expected to be available this year. Immunizing the entire population could take 10 months. Start with the most vulnerable in care homes. And where do we get down to? According to the document, the 2 vaccines are called Ambush and Triumph. Interesting. And Ambush needs to be stored at negative 94 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, if you think 94 degrees Fahrenheit is pretty hot, we're talking negative 94, and 32 is freezing, so it's even more freezing than burning freezing. And if you don't store it at those right temperatures, that's when people get really sick and die. And so, yeah, just wanted to point that out. And here's Daily Mail. Inside the mysterious Wuhan virus lab, rare pictures show scientists dressed like astronauts studying deadly pathogens in controversial institute. Well, I don't blame them. I would be too. And this is to say, you think that mask is doing anything? You think that little cloth diaper over your face is doing nothing? Because it is doing nothing. That's all it's doing. This is what people who study COVID-sized particle viruses wear to protect themselves from it. They don't wear a little fucking N95 mask or none of that crap. So just want to point that out to you. And COVID vaccine will not return life to normal in spring, 1st of October. Oh, really? 18 months? You mean after 18 months when all pandemics subside? Or epidemics, or whatever you want to call them? No, an effective coronavirus vaccine will not return life to normal in spring. A group of this is also BBC, scientists has warned a vaccine is often seen as the holy grail that will end the pandemic. But a report from researchers brought together by the Royal Society said we needed to be realistic about what a vaccine could achieve and when. They said the restrictions may need to be gradually relaxed, quote unquote, as it could take up to a year to roll the vaccine out. In other words, they want to make sure that everybody gets it. They want to put that whole pressure of like, you all have to get it. You all have to get this untested crap that's based on nothing. That's based not on these numbers from the WHO themselves. 10% of 7.8 billion people infected, 1 million died, 1.4%. Right there. 0.14% of the people infected with it. And that includes people in auto accidents that tested positive for COVID, all that crap. Thanks for watching.